Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White and this is Jason's Weird Reads, and today I have a set of batch reviews of horror novellas for you. 2023 has started off as a great year for me so far, and I started off reading, it wasn't intended by any means, but one kind of led to the other, and I ended up reading a whole bunch of horror novellas. Well, not a whole bunch, I've got like 5 or 6 here. And some of them were audiobooks that I listened to. Most of them, though, I think I read. And how about we get into it? There might be a new favorite in here. I guess we'll find out. So, first up, we have House on Abigail Lane by Keelan Patrick Burke. This book, it started off kind of slow and weird, but not necessarily weird in a good way for me. It had like a very sort of inconsistency of what was going on in this house. So basically what you have going on here is the house on Abigail Lane. It starts off with people who disappeared while building the house, and then after the house was built and people moved in, another person disappeared, and so there's people who are putting things together here as to what's going on. And pretty much soon after the first set of people disappear, the house stops selling, just sits there. And but people do move in, or at least stay there, and they see some really strange things. And like I said, there's like a weird sort of inconsistency as to what was going on. At least it seems so to me. But then about 1/3 of the way through, you're getting an explanation, which I sort of suspected, of what's going on. I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to spoil the book, but then it makes perfect sense as to what's going on, and after that I was on board, and I loved this book. This book it's very strange. It's very strongly cosmic horror. A lot of Keelan Patrick Burke's stories I've read are actually cosmic horror or weird fiction, and he gets classed mostly as a horror fiction writer, but he does his fair share of like cosmic horror and weird fiction as well. So I don't know why he doesn't get prompts for that. He should. So House on Abigail Lane, I absolutely loved it. I believe I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I highly recommend it, especially if you're into weirder things. I am huge into the idea of people disappearing, not because they were kidnapped, but I'm talking about like under strange circumstances, like somebody walks into a room and then never comes back out, or things like that. I'm also interested in entire towns. You've heard details of these. I can't think of any specifics, I forget, but people who have disappeared on a large group of people who have disappeared with their dinners set out, and the food untouched, the coffee not drank. That type of stuff fascinates me. And this book kind of plays with that idea a little bit. Although you do get a little bit of an answer as to what's going on, nothing is ever completely explained, but you do get some idea. I think what Keelan Patrick Burke does, the idea of playing with ambiguity, that often plays a big role in cosmic horror or weird fiction, is that Keelan will actually give you enough for your mind to come up with its own details. He's not being mean to you by making you question everything. He gives you at least some tidbits to mull over, and that 1/3 part of the way through is what I'm talking about, where I got the answer I was looking for, and then the rest of the journey became a lot of fun to read. So definitely check that out. Next up, and this one might be the new favorite, I don't know, it's Below by Laurel Hightower. I believe this came out in early 2022, and I didn't read it. I was kind of in a weird mood last year, and reading wasn't as fun as it could have been, but I decided to tackle it this year, and man, did I have so much fun with this book. The main character is a woman. She's traveling from her home to another city where she's supposed to meet up with a group of her her girlfriends, and they're going to have a weekend of watching horror movies and going out drinking. On the way there, a surprise snowstorm, I don't think it was forecasted, that does happen, hits, and the snow starts drifting, so she decides to pull over at a truck stop to get something to eat and take a break because she's really afraid of driving by herself. She kind of wishes that she had somebody like her ex-husband to drive for her, but she's all alone. And she doesn't consider going back because she really wants this weekend with her friends. She really needs it. And while there, she meets a trucker. The trucker sees her and kind of figures out that she might be in trouble because of the oncoming storm. And so he offers to help her out. He gives her a handheld CB radio and tells her to follow him, and he'll drive her through the storm. And along the way, he hits some black ice, and the truck he's driving T-bones, and he crashes off a bridge. Pretty much the worst case scenario for him. And so she's stuck on the side of the road, and she has a big decision to make. Should she go down and help him, see if he's okay, see if he's even alive? Or should she just stay up where she is? I'm not going to go any farther, because that's like the very beginning of the book, and the rest of it is what makes this book so good. This book is really creepy. It creeped me out in a few places. This book also kind of reminded me of a Blake Crouch novel, in the sense that I kept having to read to see what was going to happen next. The tension and the pacing never let up. This book is just so exciting. I think anyone who likes fast-paced horror stories are going to really love this one. And it's really interesting what happens at the end. I'm going to leave it at that. There is, in case you want to know, that there is like something supernatural going on, and something that's that really plays with reality. I'll leave it at that. All right, next up is another possible favorite, and that is The Mind is a Terrible Thing by Hailey Piper. This is her space horror novella that I believe also came out in 2022, and I've been wanting to read since its release, but just never got to. And I was musing the other day on another video how weird it is that I had yet to read a Hailey Piper book. Or I hadn't read a Hailey Piper book in 2022, and I was like, what the hell's up with that? So The Mind is a Terrible Thing was the first of me returning, and I really, really enjoyed going back with this book, because this book is bonkers, and Hailey Piper likes to write really bonkers type things, and this book is no exception. It's basically the main character wakes up and her crew is missing. There's nobody around, and she has to figure out first where they are, what happened to them, and figure out what these weird spider monsters are. And I'm going to leave it at that, because again, it's not a short story, it's a novella, and to go too deep into the plot will spoil things, but that's your basic premise. And this book, like I said, it's bonkers. I highly recommend it. I think you'll like it. If you like Hailey Piper, you're probably going to love this book. And it was weird, because I was reading, I think it was a Goodreads review, where somebody is saying this isn't horror, and I don't know why they would say that. This is completely a horror story. Anyways, next up I have Wrath by Carmela Howlett. Now, you may know that I've been kind of addicted to TikTok recently, and I met Carmela Howlett on TikTok. She followed me, so I followed her back. And if you know anything about TikTok, once you follow somebody, you usually, especially if they're prolific on TikTok, you usually get bombarded with their videos at first. And I still get a steady dose of Carmela Howlett, but so she talks a lot about her fiction, as you would, on TikTok. And so I asked her, and because I know she writes a lot of novella-length stories, she writes in both romance separately and horror. I believe they're pretty much separate. She doesn't write under pen names. They're all under her name, like Carmela Howlett. And so I asked her, I was like, what horror novella would you suggest a first-time reader read of yours? And she answered, and Wrath was one of the answers. And so I checked it out, and this book is, she responded to my question with a video, which you can do on TikTok, and she explained that, to check the trigger warnings if you have any triggers, and I can completely see why. This is a story about a woman who's like approaching middle age. I think she's in her 30s, late 30s maybe, and she lost her daughter to a serial killer. And soon after, about 8 months after they lost their daughter, the husband unalives himself because he can't deal with the confusion and the anger and the sorrow of losing their daughter the way they did. And so the mother is struggling with her own shit when she's approached with an opportunity to take revenge. Now, this book goes into some very pretty dark territory with both the idea of the grief you would experience in losing a child to this terrible situation, and the ideas of revenge and the consequences of revenge. So it's all like 50 to 100 pages somewhere. It's very short. It's easy to read in a sitting if you have the time. It's fun in a terrible sort of way. I highly recommend it, so you know it's good, or at least I thought it was good. I don't mean it's good because I think it's good. I only wish that there was maybe more to the other characters. There was like a cast of characters, but you really only get to know the main character. The other characters kind of blurred into each other. That's my biggest complaint about this book. But otherwise, it's a lot of fun. It really does. It's not just gory and nasty for the sake of being gory and nasty. There's consequences and for all parties involved. And it's definitely worth your time. I gave it, I think, 4 out of 5 stars. So there you go. Next up is Of Men and Monsters by Tom Deedy. I listened to this on audiobook, and I haven't read Tom Deedy since his first book, Haven. I don't know why. It's just one of those things, you read a book and you love it, and then the author continues releasing books, and I don't go back to him, and I do this all the time, and I don't know why. One thing I'm trying to do this year is stick to the authors I love. I think the reasoning why I do this is I'm always searching for new favorite authors. Finding a new favorite author is like a drug to me, except I don't continue taking the drug. Not on a steady basis anyway. Maybe I'm just a backlist reader. I don't know. But anyways, so Of Men and Monsters came out, and this is a coming-of-age story about 2 brothers and their mother who are trying to escape their father because their father is an alcoholic and a very abusive one. And so they're hiding at this beach. They're planning on staying there, and they're hoping that they can stay away from the father. And so the basic premise of this story is sort of like relocating, the constant fear of your past coming back to haunt you, and a sea creature that you grow in your bedroom that you bought from the back of a comic strip. So that all sounds weird. To be honest, the horror in this is very slight. I would say the horror is mostly connected to the father and the fear of the father finding them, and which is very understandable. So it's very real life horror. There's no monsters necessarily. There might be a monster in this short book, but I absolutely loved reading about these characters. They felt real to me, and I would say this is almost better written than Haven was when it came to character and story structure. Not necessarily. I mean, Haven is a lot bigger of a book. This one is really short. So I've made it a bit of a mission to go read more Tom Deedy this year. Tom Deedy won the Bram Stoker Award for his first novel, Haven, in the first novel category. And so I want to read more Tom Deedy. He's an awesome author, and he really captured that childhood feeling of just being alive and excited about everything, the excitement, or at least getting over that girls feeling, to being excited about them at around the age of 11 to 13. And yeah, it may become one of my favorite stories about childhood. So definitely go check that out. The next one is the last one, and it's also an audiobook that I listened to, and this one was just for fun, and it delivered. That is Clowns vs. Spiders by Jeff Strand. This, as I said, this book is it's just meant for fun. There's not really any messages in there, unless you want to talk about clown politics. But the basic premise of the story is the main character is a clown, and he ends up working for this circus with a crew of clowns for 18 years. He worked for this clown for this circus for 18 years. That's a long time. I've never worked a job for 18 years. And in this current climate that we live in, with horror movies depicting clowns as scary monsters instead of the fun-loving comedic characters they used to be, Flaunty is the main character's name. He loses, and his entire crew lose their job. They get laid off because clowns are no longer fun or funny. They don't make kids laugh anymore. They make them scream in terror. So the circus lets them go, which is sad. I mean, they are kind of at a loss, the whole clown crew, and so they decide to take on a role that goes against their clown conventions, their morality as clowns. It calls everything into question for them or on them. And they decide to go work as scary clowns in a haunted house at around Halloween. Now, because it takes place at Halloween, you might want to think that this is a good one to read at Halloween. Halloween's only mentioned like once, so I wouldn't exactly put this as like a Halloween read. You could read this any time of the year and it would still make sense. But they work at a haunted house, and so there's some character struggle there that I found interesting. It's also kind of funny because you have these almost pure-spirited clowns who just want to make children laugh, trying to completely switch their role into becoming scary clowns. And Jeff Strand, he's known for writing funny horror, comedic horror. So this really worked. This worked really well, and I had a couple of good chuckles over this story. So anyways, at the same time, you have this weird spider epidemic breaking out. These spiders that nobody's ever really seen are swarming the area, and they're very vicious, and they have a terrible venom that will kill you pretty quickly. And so the haunted house gets swarmed by these spiders, and it pretty much takes everyone out. And so it literally becomes this group of clowns versus the spiders. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was just fun and had a good couple of laughs in it. I don't think it'll ever become a favorite, but I'll probably revisit it at some point. All right, so that is my batch reviews, and thank you for watching. Have you read any of these books? And if so, please let me know what you thought of them deep down there in the darkness. Thank you for watching. Keep being creative, keep being safe, and I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.